Corey Lewandowski, former campaign manager, Trump for President 2016, engineered that victory, authored two best-selling books, Let Trump Be Trump, Trump's Enemies. And if there was ever a time for Corey Lewandowski to get into the White House and help figure this stuff out, it's now. But he's not. He's in New Hampshire. But he's with us now, also senior advisor, Trump Pence 2020. Hey, Corey, great to have you with us.
Good morning, John. Happy Wednesday.
First thing I did is I checked out our studio. Your house is fine. Everything is fine there. Hogan Gidley was on the line with me yesterday. I was in Wilmington, and he said, look, you haven't been here in a month. You've been traveling. When you go into the city, it's going to be unrecognizable to you, so don't be shocked. Kind of sad to see, these stores burned down. Many of these business owners I know, and it's just sad what is happening. And the message of what happened to George Floyd now is just getting hijacked.
Well, John, you have to remember a couple things. What has transpired with George Floyd was a terrible tragedy, and nobody can forget that. And the man was murdered. Let's not kid ourselves. It's my understanding that the police officer actually knew George Floyd, and the rumor was they had worked together through a series of off-duty events in different places for a number of years. So that's very, very troubling. The fact that this officer put his knee on the neck of a man to asphyxiate him, to kill him while he was in handcuffs. Look, John, as a former police officer, once a subject is in handcuffs and that person is thereby no longer a threat, you put that person in the back of a police vehicle, or you no longer need to use that type of force. You should never use that type of force. And I can tell you the New Hampshire Police Standards and Training Council, also known as the New Hampshire Police Academy, of which I graduated from, goes through every potential procedure and the use of force continuum. This officer was way out of line. But where we're going now, John, is the memory of Mr. Floyd is being tainted, I believe, by the looting and the destruction which is taking place. And we're seeing it now. Much of this is organized by people who just hate this country. There are people who truly want to protest in a peaceful manner, and that is their right. It's always been our right. It's been the history of this country to have that. But to destroy shops, to destroy cities and monuments, and to destroy business owners' investments that they've had for 40, 50 years, all because you believe that you have a right to do that, I don't think is the right thing to do. And I understand we have some real race relations issues in this country, John, but it doesn't give anybody, white, black, or otherwise, the right to throw rocks through people's businesses and go and loot them, because that does nothing to honor the memory of Mr. Floyd, in my opinion.
Well, it actually does the exact opposite. I mean, instead of talking about what happened there and some of the injustices and how we fix it and how we go about doing the right thing, people like me, all I'm focused on is protecting small business owners from getting burned out and getting their lives destroyed. Look, you look what these businesses have gone through with this ridiculous lockdown. And Corey, I gotta get to that. Let me just shift a second here. All these businesses shut down, 40 million people unemployed. I mean, people were arrested for trying to give a haircut or open a gymnasium. They were handcuffed and locked up and had to go in front of a judge. Yet we got thousands of people looting and protesting, and that's fine. I guess social distancing, if you're doing that, doesn't matter. I mean, what the hell is this about?
Well, John, unfortunately, it's the way the media continues to treat stories which they believe are likely detrimental to the president and other things. Look, I think everybody in this country understood that the pandemic was a threat and did exactly what was asked of us, which is stay home, don't go and interact with other people, social distance, better hand washing, better sanitation. And, hey, we all did that. And that's what we were told to do for months. But today, John, there is not anybody talking about that anymore, right? So for the 2.5 months where our country basically went into lockdown mode, where we made a strategic decision to shut our economy down so that we could stop this pandemic from impacting more people, it was the only news story for 2 months on TV. And now, in light of these protests, there is nobody talking about that anymore.
Gone.
And so, look, John, you can't have it if you're the media both ways. You can't say the most important thing that's transpiring is you must social distance. You can't be in the same car. You can't go to baseball, basketball, football games because you might be next to somebody. But it's okay to go out and protest, and hey, protesting is one thing. It's okay to go out and riot. And we have now seen reporters saying, hey, these riots, this isn't Antifa. There's no justification for that. These aren't, these are good people, some of them are saying. Hey, John, when you loot other people, when you are harming other people, when you are physically assaulting other people, you're not a good person in that regard because you think that it's okay because you're angry about something. Let's just be very clear about that. And as someone who's been in law enforcement, the men and women who hold the line, that thin blue line that protects us from the bad that goes on in the world, we have to make sure that those police officers also have the resources necessary to be able to do their jobs in an environment that keeps them and the rest of the community safe.
Well, Corey, there's no question you can't have this level of lawlessness going on and justify it. But, we've got elected officials that are saying it's okay. There's a councilwoman in Seattle basically does an interview and says, this is justified. People are pent up, and the only way they can get their message out is by looting and stealing and burning. Somebody elected these people. Is there? I always seem to get to this when you're on. Is there ever going to be a political reckoning for any of these people, or do the de Blasios of the world? Do they just keep getting reelected as we go through what we've seen the past several days?
John, I don't think there's a political awakening coming for these. There's no retribution. There's no recall for these people because, look, Mayor de Blasio's daughter was one of the people who were arrested for being out there and participating in things where the police said, you can't be doing this. She was arrested, and clearly from her mugshot, she either was surprised by the arrest or proud of it. I'm not sure which. Mm-hmm. And so, look, when that happens, John, I don't think that Mayor de Blasio is looking to affect change the way that other people would. And we now saw, John, this is amazing. Saks Fifth Avenue in New York was surrounded with razor wire. Mm-hmm. Okay, think about that. Mm-hmm. The largest Macy's store at one point, the largest department store in the world, was ransacked. They threw bricks through those glass plates in the front and went in and just started stealing whatever people thought that they were entitled to. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's not how a civilized society works. Ransacking Macy's, and it doesn't matter what the store is, to be honest with you, John. What bothers me is these businesses have basically been shuttered for 2.5 months. We've got 40 million people out of work, and all of a sudden we think that it's okay. Some people think it's okay to go and ransack these stores, steal more of their goods, and then when we come out of this on the other side, they're going to say, oh, it's Donald Trump's fault that the economy is closed, that these businesses aren't profitable, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so, look, I'm very sensitive to some of this, but let me tell you something. There is no place in a civilized society for rioting. None, zero. There is a place for protest. There is a place to go and do things properly. And by the way, John, when the Tea Party was transpiring, maybe it was Corey Lewandowski who was protesting at the state house, okay? Mm-hmm. And I went and I got a permit, and we went and we followed the rules, and that's what we did. And there is a place, and has always been a place, for peaceful protests and for us to air our grievances against the government. And people need to be held accountable for what has happened. But rioting and looting and lighting police cars on fire is not acceptable in any civilized society.
Do you think the president did the right thing in threatening to call out the military?
John, I'll tell you, your listeners know I am a huge supporter of this president. I am gravely concerned of calling active duty military officers to be on the ground on domestic soil. The last time it happened, I think, was 1992. It's been a long time. And I do think that we have other resources available to us. And let me just give you an example. I don't know, because I'm not an attorney, and I don't know what the rules are as it relates to the Department of Homeland Security and other places that have active duty police officers. I would say I would like to see those people in place first, backing up the local law enforcement, the county law enforcement, the state law enforcement, before we put military officers in our U.S. cities. I think the National Guard is an appropriate use for the governors. That is under their purview, and they should use that. And if they need assistance from the federal government, let's find out if we have federal law enforcement officers in those states. We have a huge federal law enforcement government that, whether it's uniformed Secret Service agents, whether it's Customs and Border Protection, whether it's immigration, there's a number of federally deputized law enforcement officers that I believe could serve as a backup or in addition to the current law enforcement officers who are serving on these front lines. I have some real concerns about putting active duty military on U.S. soil, to be honest with you, John.
We're with Corey Lewandowski, former campaign manager, Trump for President 2016, now senior advisor, Trump-Pence 2020. Corey, as many of you might not know, was a former police officer in New Hampshire. So he talks with some authority here. He's concerned about the positioning or deploying of U.S. military. Now we understand there's 1,600 that are on the outskirts of the city of D.C. And look, Corey, I share your concern, but I think the president had to do something because obviously this mayor wasn't capable of controlling the situation. Now you've got an incident in Virginia where you got the lieutenant governor, Justin Fairfax, Democrat, says he's going to walk with the protesters tonight past 8 p.m., defying the curfew of his Democratic mayor, LeVar Stoney, who put it in play the other day when they were burning down Richmond, and then when police attempted to disperse the crowds at the curfew, he furloughed the cops without pay who tried to implement his curfew. I've just never seen anything like this. Curfews that don't matter, lieutenant governors that are defying it. I guess no law matters now. NPR just tweeted this out. You ready? Dozens of public health and disease experts have signed an open letter in support of the nationwide anti-racism protest. So let me get this straight. Social distancing and locking down small businesses to put them in bankruptcy is okay, but it's also okay when thousands of people protest. So basically what these dozens of public health officials are saying, if it's for the right cause, then the social distancing and lockdowns don't matter. How can you even rationalize that?
Well, John, you can't, and it goes to the credibility of these people. We know that they have their own agenda. We know that when a narrative is what they want, they justify it any way they can, saying that's for the good of the country and all of those good things when it's people staying home and closing the economy. And look, John, I don't think anybody, again, is trying to overlook the severity of the pandemic, which hit our country with had 100,000 plus people who died from this. There's no question it has been devastating both economically and emotionally to a lot of people. There's no question about that. But you can't just simply justify that, hey, now that people are rioting, looting, and destroying public property, it's okay, don't worry about the health risks. I mean, this is why I think the American people are really smart. They see through this stuff all the time. Many of these people, NPR and others, are the ones who just gave us the propaganda for the last 4 years that it didn't matter what the president or his team did. None of it was good enough, successful enough. They're the ones who told us, if you remember, that if Donald Trump was elected, the stock market would crash to the floor and, we'd have the worst economy in the history of America immediately upon his election. And none of that was true, John. And people just look at this now and say, hey, you guys have no credibility. We stopped getting our news from you. And I think it goes back to, and I know it's a fairly small percentage, but why are the American taxpayers continuing to pay to have NPR as a service?
I don't know.
If you can't make it on your own, you shouldn't be able to do it. John, we don't give you as a radio entity money to just go and subsidize you so that you can say whatever you want. That's not how the business works. And, it's really time to relook at that.
No, in fact, the opposite, Corey. I work, as you know, my studio's in your house. You know how hard I work. I get off the air and I'm on the phone or visiting people all day trying to get advertisers in order to grow my network. So I don't have the luxury of getting subsidies from the government so I can just do whatever I want. So I'm sick and tired of that. But I got to tell you, I called from the beginning. This whole lockdown nonsense was designed to tank the economy, to get to a mail-in ballot, to get rid of Trump. And now it's exposed for the fraud that the whole thing is. all the lockdowns just need to end now. In fact, in Virginia, the governor says he's going to phase 2 or phase 3 in a couple of weeks. I don't even think it matters. I mean, I would just go open up your business now, do whatever you want, because, I mean, how do you justify I can't get 6 people in a restaurant, but 1,000 people can protest, and I've got the lieutenant governor and the mayor marching with them without social distancing? How do you justify that, Corey?
John, you can't. And remember, just 2 weeks ago, we were watching these gym owners of the Atlas Gym in New Jersey who said, hey, we've taken every precaution necessary. This is a private facility. We're going to start to open up our facility to members only. We're going to keep social distancing in place. And the governor of New Jersey came by and through the health department literally padlocked the doors to that gym to make sure that nobody went inside. Where are we today?
Yep.
Not only are we not padlocking businesses, right? Those individuals have to try and protect their businesses, but instead, some of these elected officials are either giving tacit or overt approval, and as you say, joining some of these people in their protests. And again, John, there's nothing wrong with protests. I have no problem with an organized protest. I have no problem with people airing their grievances to the federal government or the state government, the local government. I got no issue with that. There is a way to do that. But I have never, ever, and I never will support people's desire to simply destroy other people's personal property, loot their stores, have cars, police cars set on fire because they feel it's their right. It's not their right. It's not legal. It's not acceptable in a civilized society. And these people who are doing this, John, are either professional agitators and organizers, and they should go to jail.
Well, they get locked up, and because of the new bail laws in New York City, where there's no bail posted, they're out in 24 hours back looting. I mean, this is the ridiculousness of what De Blasio and these prosecutors have done. So they lock them up, they put them in jail, they're out in 24 hours. They don't even have to, if they're under 18, they don't even have to call their parents. They just let them out because we have a no bail policy. We're just living in a ludicrous time. I got to tell you that. Corey, I'm going to get to the convention. I have to applaud the president in saying, you know what, if I can't have a convention in Charlotte, I'm going to take my $500 million, because that's what it is. It's a $500 million in economic activity for starving businesses in Charlotte. And he says, I'm going to take it to Florida, Georgia, Nashville, somewhere, not here. And I agree with him 100%. How do you stand on this?
John, I agree with that also. Look, this governor is playing politics because it goes back to the world of social distancing. He believes that the most important issue is that we continue to social distance through the convention. And what we believe is a priority is bringing the financial resources of a national convention to a city which wants to have those financial resources and highlighting all that Charlotte has to offer, which is what we wanted to do. The governor clearly doesn't want that, so that's fine. There are other places. This is not the first time somebody has said Donald Trump can't do something, and he doesn't just wilter and go. He says, fine, give me a new solution. Give me an alternative. And I haven't spoken directly to Governor DeSantis or Governor McMaster in South Carolina, but I am certain those states would love to have 50,000 people who want to spend their money in their state, stimulating their economy, bringing jobs, paying for hotel rooms, places that have been decimated because of the coronavirus pandemic, getting a recovery, in effect, with sector money, which is what this convention was going to be. Remember, this is the same city that held the convention for Barack Obama, and they did a great job, so they had an opportunity to do it. We wanted to be there. But this president and the Republican National Committee are not going to be held hostage, and if they don't believe that they're going to give us the opportunity to have our people in an arena, in a safe environment like we've said we'd be able to do, then there are plenty of other places that would love to have the financial infusion of capital that all of these delegates and alternates and people are going to come and bring to that environment.
You know what? I think this was a great move by the president. Cooper doesn't want to have it. Cooper's up for election in November. He's going to have to tell his voters why he took $500 million out. This whole social distancing now, the whole scam has been exposed, because if 30,000 people were protesting in the middle of Charlotte, he wouldn't do a damn thing, right? So that's fine, but now you can't have his convention. So, see, he's got to answer to his left-wing whack job base there that he can't win without. So Cooper's in a box, so he says, okay, you can't have a convention. So I say let's take it to somebody that wants us. I'm a delegate. I want to go to a convention. I want 50,000 people there. Let's go to Florida. Let's go to Tennessee. Let's go to South Carolina. Let's go to Georgia.
Hey, John, my friend, the governor of South Carolina, Henry McMaster, would welcome us with open arms. My friend Ron DeSantis in Florida would say, hey, pick a city. You can come to Miami. You can come to Orlando. By the way, there's all kinds of hotel rooms in Orlando in case no one's ever heard of this little place called Disney World, right? Mm-hmm. They're used to these things. There's plenty of places. There's plenty of arenas that we can go to. And by the way, John, we've got time. You know, this is when the media and the governor is completely wrong. They say it takes months, years to prepare. We've got to do all these security issues. Hey, that's the old way of doing business. We're on what we call Trump time. Trump time is faster than regular time. We're going to get it done. If the president decides today we're going to Orlando or Miami or Sarasota or wherever he decides, South Carolina, Rock Hill, whatever it may be, boom, it's going to get done. It's going to be executed. It's going to be the way that he wanted to have it.
That's right. I want to go, and it's got to be done the right way. And this whole lockdown, social distancing, can't have 50 people, 20 people. It's all exposed now for the hoax it is in order to control your life, trample on the economy, and get rid of Trump. It's now backfiring. So, look, I applaud the effort. I look forward to going. And, you know, as far as it takes months or years or whatever, I was there at the campaign when you put together a 25,000 person rally at a football stadium in Mobile in 3.5 days, right? You announced it on Tuesday. It was a Friday. That was 3 days at 6 p.m. You came with a flyover. The media was there. Jeff Sessions was there. We had 22,000 people at a football station in Mobile. Remember that? You organized it in 3 days.
John, I remember it, and I also remember looking back when they told us that it took 2 months to schedule an overseas trip. When Donald Trump ended up going to Mexico, we did it in 24 hours, if you remember that, right?
Yep.
You can never pull this off. We do things in Trump time, which is faster than the rest of the time in the world, and that's why this guy's been able to get so many things done in his first term. And that's why this convention is going to get pulled off. It's going to be amazing, and it's going to be in a place that wants to have that infusion of massive capital that everyone is going to bring to that community.
John Fredericks Radio Network, Trucking the Truth Across America. Corey Lewandowski, thanks for being with us as always. And remember, Corey Lewandowski, former cop in New Hampshire, so he understands this stuff.